Alright, it's probably the last video I'm going to shoot for today. This is about the butterfly effect, and I've heard some things about it, okay, but there's a little documentary by the top fives about the butterfly effect. And I don't know if a lot of people even believe in this type of stuff. Let's check it out. This might be kind of interesting. This might be a pretty good theory, dude.
The butterfly effect, a name and concept formulated by American meteorologist and mathematician Edward Norton Lorenz in the 1960s, is the theory that one small change in the starting condition of an event, such as the flutter of an innocent butterfly soaring through the sky, can have a dramatic effect on the outcome of an event, like cause a tornado on the other side of the world, or less drastic, cause a plane to experience turbulence. Edward first popularized the butterfly effect after running weather forecasts through a computer using precise variables, and realizing that just a minute alteration of any given calculation, such as wind speed, temperature, or humidity, caused a dramatic influence of the following 2 months' worth of simulated weather predictions. But this is by no means just the case with the weather, but every single event, thought, and outcome ever to have happened.
That's interesting because though I've only heard the butterfly effect described through events, which is why I was so interested to start the video, but even hearing the start of it just being about weather, well yeah, of course, any minor change in weather is going to have a lot of, like in the calculations, how you calculate weather is going to affect all of it. I mean,
this is why you did not read the title wrong, and I did not get you with clickbait. This video will have an impact on the outcome of your life in ways you probably never thought.
That, but let's find out.
You learn about the butterfly
Let's do it.
So how can we relate and physically see this? Well, like I said, every single event in reality is the result of a past action. But there are some examples that will reminisce with all of us, because the action started out so small, yet had such a devastating or positive outcome on all of our lives.
Okay.
Let's take a look at a few of those examples. World War I was an event that changed the course of all of our lives. But what if World War I never took place? Well, that in theory could be equally as damaging, because another more devastating war may have broken out. But just what if? Well, it's been theorized that if somehow a war did not happen, there of course would have been no World War II, no Hitler rising to power, no 60+ million deaths, and fast forward many years, theory suggests there would be no tension with the Middle East, no Taliban, and no Al-Qaeda, just to name a few.
That is such a huge jump, dude. What the fuck, dude?
World War I was destined to happen, and they're probably right. World War I was a combination of many things, but it can be narrowed down to one small event that, if altered, could have changed its course entirely. And that was the wrong turn and the stalling of a car. A car that was carrying the Archduke of Austria, Franz Ferdinand.
Right.
You see, on the morning of June the 28th, 1914, Franz's car was attacked with a grenade, which failed to hit its target, but instead injured passengers of the car behind. Later that day, Franz wanted to visit those wounded by the blast, and whilst en route, the driver of his car made a wrong turn down a street. Standing outside a cafe on this very street was 19-year-old Serbian Gavrilo Princip, one of the men involved in the attack on Franz that morning. He spotted the car had stalled whilst trying to turn around in the road, ran over, and shot Franz and his wife dead.
Right.
If not for the wrong turn made by Franz's car, he would not have been shot. If he had not been shot, Austria-Hungary would not have declared war on the home country of the man who shot him, which caused Germany to declare war on Russia,
I forgot
followed
that
by
happened.
France and Belgium, causing the UK to declare war on Germany, starting World War I.
I actually did forget that happened.
Had Franz not been assassinated, World War I would never have happened that way. It may not have been prevented, but it certainly would have started differently.
Yeah, I was about to say, I understand what they're saying now. That's not how the story was told when I first heard it, so I'll look some stuff up about it later. But yeah, World War I would have still happened even if that would have changed.
All because a car took a wrong turn and stalled in the middle of the road. Whilst on the subject of world wars, you may have heard before that one pull of the trigger, how a war did not happen. There of course would have been no World War II, no Hitler tension, a car, Franz and his wife, followed away. It may not have, you may have heard before
you heard, this is a good story too though, actually.
Could have prevented World War II and the death of over 60 million people. Henry Tandy, a British soldier, allegedly bumped into Adolf Hitler in a French village in 1918, when a wounded Hitler walked into his line of fire. But Henry decided against shooting him, before a young Adolf nodded at him and walked away. Had he shot him, Adolf would not have been the driving force behind World War II, and it's anyone's guess what would have happened.
Yeah, I've heard that
World
one
War II
before.
would have surely been different, and it may or may not have started, which may have been for better or for worse. Because that would have had a knock-on effect on your ancestors, who may never have met because of the fact World War II never took place.
Alright, the only thing I don't like about this video, though, is that they're purposely leaving out a ton of detail from these events to make it seem like it could be, like, exactly pinpointed by one event. But we'll give it to them.
Or had a different outcome. Thus resulting...
Because that's what the whole theory is about, so try and...
Think about this.
You have to be able to choose
if
a
Henry
point.
had pulled the trigger, although a war may have started, 60 million people may not have died. So just think, out of those 60 million who died, they could have gone on to have children, some of which could have been the next Einsteins or world-changing
I mean,
visionaries.
there's no way that you can dispute that one man's will can affect history, right? There's a whole... There are entire college courses just obsessed with this idea of one great man in history, you know what I mean? And somebody who literally becomes an impactful force, like, regardless of all the other factors included, that they were going to do something great anyways and impact the entire timeline of history, sometimes the next 100 years or next 2-3 generations even. So, you know, same thing like, you know, Alexander the Great, Napoleon, you know what I mean? Like these fucking larger than life figures that just do so many great things. So many people were talking about, like, what if Martin Luther King wasn't standing on the balcony? You know what I mean? What if Malcolm X wasn't assassinated? Even Biggie and Tupac, right? What if those two weren't killed? Like, what kind of impact would they have continued to have on the world if those things wouldn't have happened? So it's inevitable to kind of have that thinking of the past in those kind of terms. And when you talk about wars and, like, millions of people dying, I think in these cases, somebody was going to take their place, maybe to not such an effect, but when you study this stuff, you talk about, is it history that shapes the person, or is it the person that shapes history? And of course it bounces back and forth. But in these big wars, World War I, World War II, and the attack on terror, the terrorist attacks and things like that happen now with the Taliban, this is history, in my personal opinion. You know, do some research, do some reading, but in my personal opinion, history is dictating what kind of people are going to be able to come to power in these times. World War I, World War II are the biggest examples, but we needed a Hitler in World War II. Germany needed a big figure to follow. The people were looking for that type of figure, and even if it wasn't somebody as successful as him, they were looking for a figure like him, and that's why the war was unavoidable. I mean, after World War I, Germany had no money, it had no influence, you know what I mean? The people were starved and depressed, and so it was one of those situations, you know, culturally, not morally, but, you know, it's one of those situations where they were looking for somebody to impact their society, and they were going to find it. They were going to push somebody in power. That's the voice that they were listening to. You know, of course, you need both time, place, and people. And it is incredible when you study history and you find all those things intertwined all at the same time.
All
so
because one man
it's
decided
incredible
against pulling the trigger.
But yeah, if he would have been shot, I think it would have happened way differently.
This one is interesting and is quite popular, because if JFK had not been assassinated, who knows what the outcome that would have had on the United States. Well, what if it could be traced back to when he was around 20 years old?
Oh,
that
yeah.
If he chose to do something
Wow.
different on one certain day, he would not have been killed all those years later. You see, in 1940, 23 years before he was assassinated, he had an accident whilst playing sports, which is thought to be the driving force behind his never-ending struggle with back pain. If not for the back pain, he would not have worn a back brace. If he had not been wearing a back brace on the day he was assassinated, he would have slumped or fallen after the first non-fatal shot hit him. But instead, he stayed upright because of his back brace, allowing his body to be positioned perfectly for a second shot. Many experts have all agreed, if not for the back brace, that was the result of years of lower back pain fueled from this
I've never
sporting
met a
accident
single
many years previously. JFK would have been
person
able to
who's
duck out the way after the first shot, and the second fatal shot wouldn't have been feasible.
Okay, let's see other significant events.
Take the handful of people who were late for work on the morning of 9/11.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Or the fact that Seth MacFarlane missed his flight because he was drunk the night before,
Yep.
preventing him being killed that
Those
day,
are nuts.
which would have been the end of Family Guy, and the millions of hours spent by people watching that show would have been spent doing something else, which would have resulted in a different outcome for those people. Take Elise O'Kane, a United Airlines flight attendant who typed her flight schedule incorrect into the airline's computer system before 9/11, which in turn led to her not being on her original scheduled flight 175. Take the fact the US Space Shuttle's two side thruster rockets had to be made a smaller size due to the fact they passed through many tunnels during transport. Tunnels which were made 2,000 years ago and were built at the time to just fit the width of two horses carrying a chariot. As someone put it, one of the most complicated and groundbreaking pieces of machinery in history had to be designed to fit around a decision made 2,000 years ago.
That's pretty crazy.
Take this and the hundreds of personal scenarios you can think of relating to events that happened in your life, and you wonder how things could have been different, for better or for worse, if one little piece was taken away. If my parents had never met, I would never have been born. If I was never born, the 3,200 plus years that has been spent watching my videos by millions of people, which has literally changed the outcome of the world in some way or another, would never have happened. Sure, everyone would have done other things in that time, or watched other videos, but because it would have been different, maybe less or more time spent watching, different conversations with people or different thoughts depending on which video you watched, a different outcome would result.
That culturally responsible video.
Now, this is a question I do often ask myself. I wonder if by someone sitting and watching one of my videos, that prevented them from maybe going outside and getting into trouble. Or that maybe those 5 minutes spent watching one of my videos, or anyone else's video, meant they had something in common with a person that led to them dating and potentially starting a family down the line. Now, I am not the cause of that, or taking any credit for a scenario like that, but we are all here to serve a purpose one way or another, and we all seem to shape each other's lives a lot more than we think. And when you learn more about this, you will soon come to realise, as I explained, why the title of this video is not clickbait. The minutes you have spent watching this video has changed the outcome of your life, and in turn the lives of millions of others, because your actions today will be different. Some may be instant tiny things that happen today, or this week, but in time, what happens today will have a snowball effect on the direction of your life, which in turn can and will have a huge effect on everyone's life around you.
I think that that's a really interesting take on it. And I think the reason that it's always a really interesting theory is because there are multiple points of view you can have. And that's all depends on how you view time and how you view people's influence on time. But I think overall, you know, so they talk about, okay, what happens if, you know, for his personal butterfly effect, they're saying, you know, well, you know, him and his girlfriend met through Minecraft, which would have never been invented if this guy never made it, so on and so forth. And I think that those things, those big events do affect our life. It's kind of inevitable that, you know, if you meet because of a certain thing or have a certain thing in common, then it does determine where you go and who you meet. You know, like, you know, some little things is even just the college you decide to go to and things like that. But as far as like the flow of history as a whole, I think the real question is, are you so sure another Minecraft wouldn't have been invented? Are you so sure another Bill Gates wouldn't have had the opportunity to become successful? And if it's not one person that's doing it, a mogul, you know, because we have a tendency to look at the big people in history. But are you sure that there wouldn't have been a group of people or companies that would have created something extremely similar, if not the same thing? Because a lot of these situations now where things are created, it's not about having the unique idea, it's about having the patent for that unique idea. Or I've had somebody tell me, you know, they have the same idea, like I stole an idea for a video from them and we've never met, right? And I was like, well, you know, I was like, that's a very interesting way to put it. But like, there's no way for me to steal something from somebody I don't know. We just had the same idea. I just had the ability to do it and you didn't. I mean, I've never met you. I've never talked to you. I don't know who you are, right? It's not possible for you to have the idea of make a try not to laugh challenge or these 3 videos that I put together, but you didn't. I just put them together. I don't know. I didn't talk. We've never met. You know what I mean? So it's like, if I didn't do it, somebody else would have, right? And so that's what I think some people get confused in this idea of uniqueness. And at the same time, you still have to respect the idea of uniqueness too, right? There are no unique jokes, right? Every joke you've made has been made before. But if you're going to be quoting someone directly, you have to give credit somewhere for something that you've quoted directly. So there's definitely has to be a balance there. So, I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. This is a very interesting concept to me. I really enjoy these vids. And these are fun for me. I'll see you guys in the next one, man. Peace.